I am going to walk you through a little bit of my process in completing Unit 17 homework for our OSU boot camp. It was this particular assignment, front end dev homework, Unit 17, Code Your Portfolio homepage. This is a little bit more in depth on the instructions. I just wanted to focus for you kind of where I started because one of the requirements was to redline out or outline your page before you even start, which I do think was a very, very good place to start. They showed you an example on page 3 and on page 4, which I think the examples are pretty decent, and the tags, I think that there were definitely some disconnects that I had to make myself, so I'm going to fill in some of those gaps for you guys today. So I went ahead and I screenshot this particular picture and this one, and I put it into Figma. I do this quite a bit. I put the directions next to where I'm working because for me that kind of helps. So that's, I guess, one trick of the trade, if you will. If you need help, I should say this: if there are other things that I say that I did, like screenshot or do this or that, I am happy to help with any of those particular pieces. So just write it in the comments. Let me know that you need a separate video on that, or message me, however you want to handle it, and I will make little, mini videos for those specific skills. Because I do sometimes take for granted that I'm kind of like on my computer all the time. I use it for work, so happy to help with those. Just let me know if there is anything, and trust me, there's no stupid questions. I've had to Google and YouTube pretty much everything that I know myself, since I've never been formally trained in any of this. Okay, so the basic requirements for the website are to make sure that you have a section tag, a div tag, an image tag, H1 tag, P tag, button tag. You may or may not need more than these, but at the minimum, you're going to have at least each one of those. They give you an example of kind of how to start with these, and another same thing up here. You also have to make sure that you have a header, and you're going to have some kind of section or body to your web page, and then you are going to have a footer. Okay, that's about as far as we're going to go, like with the actual directions. But these tags I'm going to talk about a lot more in depth, because I think that for me, one of the biggest cracks when I first started was not understanding what the tags did. I also am going to go into some of my characters, and we're going to break them down according to these. If you are not familiar with my characters yet, I'm still working on these videos. They're not all the way there yet, but I started a little mini series, I guess, in response to some other students that had some questions. I would start at number 1 and go through number 10. Eventually I'll get into jQuery and Bootstrap and all that fancy stuff as I learn it myself, because again, I'm learning along with you guys. That's part of the premise of these videos. But you may want to go back and see those, because those will definitely help you understand a little bit more of what these characters are doing. All right, so to start, for my brain, I like to see it on a whole. So what I did was found a website. I had to look a little bit because I was looking for something specific. I wanted a basic website that didn't have a lot of shapes that looked like different things, because I think when you're first starting and you're learning the box model, one of the most confusing things to me was there was not just box. I never really actually saw any physical boxes or any outlines or any of these supposed invisible entities that everyone kept talking about. And I remember that really, really frustrating me. But once I understood the grid and the box model a little bit better, then it made sense. So I felt like this one was a good start because things actually looked like boxes to me. Okay, so this site has a header up here at the top. You may not know that right now that that's the header, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. And then it has a section within a body tag. I would argue there's probably more than one section here, but we're going to treat it as one whole section for now, because that's kind of what the goal of the assignment is. So we're going to pretend that everything that I'm scrolling here is one whole section, which it can be. There's no hard and fast, I guess, set rules on how you want to organize your site. You could do one section, you could do multiple sections. Okay, and then down here is a footer. Okay, right now that doesn't really make a whole heck of a lot of sense, but the goal of your website is to organize the information for whatever user you're intending on having to read the website. So before this step, I think we've gone over this enough class, so I didn't feel like that was warranted. That's why it's important to kind of sketch out how you want your portfolio to look, which I can show you mine at the end of the video if it doesn't run too long. But okay, so back into Figma. I screenshot the entire website, and I can do another video on that if you're not quite sure how to do that, because I think that's super, super helpful. It's a fabulous tool that helps me see, oh, okay, that's how things all connect. So this whole box is actually the first person, or whoever created this website, that's their entire first page. The page will be able to do what we were just doing. The user will be able to start at the top, see a portion of it within the viewport, and then scroll through and kind of pick through what they want and go all the way. They have not gone to another page yet. They're still on that landing page or that home page. So this is going to be all in one frame in Figma, and for our purposes today, it's going to create a little bit of our HTML framework. Obviously this isn't a portfolio site, but it's going to do the same basics, and I figured it would be good to show you on a real site rather than, something that I just created. All right, so hold that in your brain, because we're going to go back to that. But I need to introduce the characters, and again, if these don't make sense to you, please watch the other videos, because I'm heading somewhere with that, with the explanation of the box model, and you'll get more details on this. Okay, today we are only going to use Mr. Architect. He is the one with the briefcase and has a bunch of tags because he represents HTML, and we are also going to have our tag bodies. Because those are going to actually be our things that create our boxes. If that's a little confusing to you right now, just bear with me. Okay. All right. All of this I explained in another video. Ingrid Inline and Betty Block I explained a little bit more in videos 7, 8, 9, and even 10. So border padding, all that, these things that I'm going to reference in this video, if they're confusing to you, then again, I would go and watch 1 through 10. I think that will help you. All right. So we have a couple of tag elements that they're requiring us to have, which we've talked about. They want section, div, image, H1P, buttons, and then they also want you to have footer, and they want you to have a header. Okay, so though I pulled out, it was a little bit of a hunt and peck process to figure out the exact requirements, which is definitely my biggest argument about some of these activities. I feel like it's just way too confusing to find what you're actually trying to do. So what I did, this is really the requirements. I just did it in a picture form, okay? I wrote down that we need to have some kind of HTML and body. This is not in the directions, but I'll explain to you why that's important here in a minute. Over here, you are required to have a section, a div, an H1, a header, and a footer. And you're also required to have an image and a button tag. So basically, these are your minimum requirements for your site that you're going to have to do in order to submit this Unit 17. All right, so keep these tags in your head. Anytime it's an image or a button tag, those are going to be inline elements that I talk about more in previous videos. If it's a section, a div, an H1, header, and a footer, those are going to be orange colored elements. And then if it's an HTML or a body, we're going to use green for this video. Hey, why is that important? Who cares? Who cares if it's an inline or a block element? That matters because it kind of determines how they fall on the page, which we will see soon once we get into CodePen. I got this information from W3 schools under block and inline. That way you can tell what the different types of tags do. Okay, so what you need to think about with a tag is every time you see a tag, it creates one box. Okay, so let's start with the header just because it's at the top. I know that the header is going to be orange because that is, oops, I'm already botching up we'll do it the copy and paste way. All right, so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to show you that the header for this particular website, now I might have to put a frame down for that to show. Let's see. It's becoming annoying. I have to do that every time. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to shut down some of these here tabs because my computer is is like, I can hear it going, it's making some crazy noise. Running too much apparently. Alright, so orange is going to be my header. What I'm doing here is really the requirement in the assignment. It's called redlining. I'm just using different colors. I'm making all of the elements into a box because this header is an actual rectangle, as you can see. Is the rectangle filled with, or is the space filled 100% with something? No, there is this thing called white space here. Okay, so I have white space. Well, let's go left to right. I have white space. I have a little bit of text here. Looks like maybe some pull downs. And then I have some white space here. Actually, I wonder if they're going to count this as the header. They could possibly just count this as the header. And this would be the same thing though. So let's make 2 headers. Because I'd have to go into the actual code to see how they coded it. But let's just assume that could be one whole header, or we could count it as maybe a header or a title. But either way, no matter how you look at it, let's take our first rectangle. So this is rectangle number 1. Okay, this is rectangle number 1. And he starts at the very, very top of the viewport. Okay, let's move our frame down. So, yeah, no, I'm not gonna mess with that. Okay, pretend this is the top of the viewport, right, with the number 1. That is the top left corner of the viewport. That is really important in coding. Okay, so the very first rectangle that is used to build the page is up here. Okay, and it's filled right now with color, the whole thing. It goes from left to right. It has white space from left to right until we get to the social media tags. And then we have 1, 2, 3 links to different social medias, and then we have different actions that the user could use. They can go to their account or they can go to their login. Okay, and then we have a second part of potentially the header or another section or another div. We're not 100% sure, but it's also a box or a rectangle. Okay, you can't see all of it. These are invisible lines that I'm adding in. Obviously, when we looked at the website here, the boxes weren't really there, but you have to think about them in box form. Okay, so now we have a second rectangle. This one also spans left to right, and because it is a block element, it fell right underneath this one. Okay, it went right underneath number 1 because it was a block element. If it were an inline element, it would have potentially fallen somewhere else on the page. Okay, so let's say, alright, we have a whole section here. We're going to treat that as a whole section because that's what the assignment was asking us to do. I know that my section tag is going to be orange, so I'm going to grab another orange box. And I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste it. Okay, so I have another, oops. Okay. And I'm going to make this a really, really big box this time because this section is very, very big. Okay, I have a huge section. Now, this one also, number 3, my number 3 box here, he or she, remember, it's actually she because it's the Betty block, okay? So really I have 3 Betty blocks here right now. I have number 1 Betty block, I have number 2 Betty block, and I have number 3 Betty block. Okay, this Betty block is quite a bit bigger, but it's still a block element. Oh, my computer is gonna die. I'm gonna have to pause this video for a minute and start it up again because I'm gonna lose my power.